I wasn't trying to watch her. Not really. But every night around 10, like clockwork, her silhouette would move past the narrow hallway window outside my apartment barefoot. Slow, usually in that loose gray robe. I told myself it was just coincidence. Until the night she stopped. I was standing by the peephole again, just watching. And this time, she turned and looked straight into it. The hallway was dim, lit by a single flickering bulb, humming like it had a pulse. I panicked and stepped back, heart suddenly loud in my chest. A few seconds passed. Then came a knock. 3 calm taps. I opened the door like I was just heading out. "Hey," I said, keeping it casual. She was leaning against the wall in her robe, arms crossed, barefoot on the cold tile. "You busy?" I shook my head, unsure if I was lying. She nodded toward her door, just a few feet away. "Curtain rods loose again. Think you could give me a hand?" It was late. I had work in the morning. My head was already buzzing. But I followed her. Of course I did. Her apartment was warm, quiet, dim amber lighting. One low lamp in the corner cast long shadows across the wooden floor. A half-drunk glass of wine sat on the kitchen counter. Jazz played faintly from a speaker tucked somewhere behind a stack of books. The smell of orange peel and perfume lingered in the air. She pointed to the living room window. "It keeps sliding out of the bracket." I grabbed the small step stool she offered and got to work, trying not to think too much about how close she stood. Her presence was magnetic, like she had gravity and I was too light to resist it. As I reached up to realign the rod, I heard the soft clink of her glass behind me. I felt her move closer, just to the left of my shoulder. When I finished, I stepped down and turned to tell her. But she was already there, lifting the edge of the curtain slowly, then letting it fall. With her hand still on the fabric, she looked at me and said quietly, "No one needs to see this." My throat tightened. I didn't move. She brushed past me, almost touching but not quite, and walked toward the kitchen. "You want a glass?" she asked over her shoulder. "Aisha." I watched her pour. The robe shifted as she moved, revealing a glimpse of her thigh, smooth and pale in the low light. I sat at the small round table by the window. She joined me, placing a glass in front of me, then took a seat across, pulling one leg up under her. "You've been watching me lately," she said without looking up. I nearly choked. "No, I mean, I wasn't." She smirked into her wine. "Relax. I don't mind. Just don't be so obvious." Peepholes reflect light. The silence that followed was tight. My pulse drummed in my ears. She finally glanced at me. "You live alone?" I nodded. "Yeah, since May." "No girlfriend?" I shook my head. "You?" She laughed once, dry. "Divorced. No kids. Quiet building suits me." There was something in her tone, a flatness, like she was answering before I even finished asking. A buzz from the hallway made us both pause. A knock sharp, fast echoed against her door. She looked up sharply, eyes narrowing. "Don't say a word." I froze. She stepped to the door silently, peered through the peephole, then stepped back. "Upstairs neighbor. He's nosy." She didn't open, just waited, one hand on the knob, the other gripping the edge of her robe. After a full minute, she exhaled slowly and turned back. "He thinks I'm alone." I sat there, tense, my glass untouched. She walked back to the table, picked up her wine, sipped. Her hand trembled slightly now. "You should go," she said finally, "before this turns into something neither of us meant." I stood slowly, unsure what to say. At the door, I reached for the knob. "You forgot something," she said behind me. I turned. She was holding my phone. Screen off. I hadn't even noticed it was missing. "You sure you didn't mean to leave it?" she asked, eyes unreadable. I stepped back in, took the phone from her hand. Our fingers touched for just a second too long. "Good night, Ryan," she said, already walking back into the dim hallway of her apartment. But just before she disappeared behind the curtain again, I heard her voice float back softly. "Next time, don't knock." The next night, I didn't knock. I stood outside her door at 9:04 p.m., just like she said. "One knock," she told me, but I hesitated. My fingers hovered. The hallway was too quiet, too still. A door creaked open above. I backed away, pretending to check my phone. Then her door opened on its own. She was standing in the doorway in black yoga pants and a dark tank top. Hair pulled back, face clean, no makeup. She looked younger, or maybe just real. More real than yesterday. "I wasn't sure you'd come," she said, stepping aside. "I wasn't sure either." "No wine tonight," she said. "But I made coffee." The living room was even dimmer than before. The only light came from a small lamp on the kitchen counter. The curtain we fixed was shut tight. A candle flickered on the coffee table, casting slow-moving shadows across the floor. She handed me a warm mug. Our fingers touched again. It wasn't accidental this time. "I like the quiet," she said, sitting cross-legged on the couch. "No music, no phone, no noise." I sat in the armchair across from her, unsure where to look. Her posture was relaxed, confident. I could feel the tension in the air but couldn't name it yet. "Do you always invite your neighbors over for curtain emergencies?" That made her laugh softly, but genuinely. "Only the ones who pretend they're not watching." I smiled, finally taking a sip of the coffee. Strong, slightly sweet. "You always watch back?" She tilted her head. "Only when I want to be seen." We stayed like that for a while, not talking, just sipping coffee in silence. It wasn't awkward. It felt like something suspended between two decisions that hadn't been made yet. Then her phone vibrated on the counter. She didn't move. A second buzz. Finally, she stood and walked over, glanced at the screen. Her face changed just for a second. "Everything okay?" "Yeah," she said, too quickly, then flipped the phone screen down and walked back. I didn't push. She sat on the couch again, this time closer to the middle, her knee brushing the edge of the table. A silver chain glinted briefly beneath her collarbone. "What's that?" I asked. She looked down, reached into her top and pulled out a small locket. Simple, worn. She opened it slightly, then closed it again before I could see what was inside. "Just something old," she said. "Can I?" "Not yet." She tucked it back under her shirt, and something about the way she said it not yet made my stomach knot. More silence. Then footsteps outside the hallway again. Slow, deliberate. She held her finger to her lips. Listened. They passed. She let out a breath. "People notice too much in buildings like this." "You worried someone saw me come in?" "I'm worried someone's looking for reasons." The tension spiked again, then softened when she leaned back, one hand behind her head. "You ever do something just to see what would happen?" she asked. I nodded. "Plenty of things." She looked at me then directly, openly, like she was about to say something she shouldn't. Her voice dropped. "I liked seeing your face the other night, frozen behind that peephole, like you didn't know if you should hide or come closer." I laughed nervously, set my coffee down. She leaned forward just a little, and the space between us felt razor thin. "I'm still not sure what I should do," I said quietly. She reached toward me, fingertips brushing the inside of my wrist. It was a soft touch, barely there, but it set every nerve on fire. I leaned in without thinking. Then her phone rang, a sharp sound that cut through everything. She pulled back instantly, stood up, walked over to the counter. stared at the name on the screen, didn't answer, silenced it, tossed it face down again. When she turned back, something had changed. Her jaw was tight. She picked up the candle, blew it out. The room darkened. "Time's up," she said. "For tonight." I stood, slow, the heat between us still pulsing like an unfinished chord. At the door, she didn't hand me my phone this time. Instead, she touched the collar of my shirt gently and said, "If you're not afraid of mornings, try Saturday. 10. She opened the door quietly, peeked into the hallway, then gave me the smallest nod. "And wear something that doesn't look like you're sneaking around." She closed the door behind me. The hallway light flickered again as I walked back toward my own door, heart pounding louder than my footsteps. Saturday morning came too fast. I must have changed shirts 5 times before settling on the first one again. Simple, neutral, not sneaky like she asked. Still, I checked the hallway twice before leaving my apartment. No one outside. No sounds behind the doors. Her apartment door was already unlocked, just like she promised. I pushed it open slowly. A soft morning light leaked around the edges of the curtains she kept closed. The coffee machine hummed quietly on the kitchen counter. She stood barefoot near the window, wearing a long t-shirt and leggings, hair slightly messy like she hadn't worried about anything but the moment I'd arrive. "You're early," she said, turning her head just enough for me to catch her smile. "Couldn't sleep," I admitted. "That makes 2 of us." She waved me in. I closed the door silently behind me. The whole place felt different in daylight. More real, less like a secret fantasy, more like something I wasn't sure I deserved to be part of. Her robe from the other night hung lazily on the back of a chair. There were 2 cups already on the table. We sat opposite each other again, but closer this time, barely an arm's length apart. She pulled her chain free from under her shirt, the silver locket resting against her collarbone. In daylight, I noticed tiny scratches across its surface, like it had been opened and closed too many times. "Want to tell me who's inside it?" I asked softly. "Nobody," she said. "That's the point." Before I could respond, her buzzer shrieked loud, sharp, unexpected. She jumped to her feet, nearly knocking her cup. Her eyes widened not in surprise, but in recognition. "Stay here," she whispered. She moved to the intercom, pressed the speaker button without speaking. A man's voice boomed through the static. "We need to talk. I know you're in there." My breath caught. I strained to listen. "Go away," she said, voice steady but tight. "You've been ignoring my calls. That should tell you something." He cursed under his breath, and then the unmistakable sound of a fist hitting the door. My pulse spiked. She looked at me over her shoulder, quick, wide-eyed. Her hands trembled as she pressed a finger to her lips. "Do not move," he kept pounding. A neighbor's door upstairs opened. Footsteps paused on the landing above. Someone whispered. The whole floor felt awake now. "If you don't open, I'll wait," he yelled. Then silence. Footsteps fading. We both froze until the elevator doors clanged shut somewhere in the distance. She exhaled shakily and pressed a hand to her forehead. "I'm sorry. He's not good at letting go." I stood, unsure if I should approach. "Is he?" "My ex," she said quickly. "Don't worry. He just hates losing." Her voice carried a mix of anger and fear that made something inside my chest tighten. I stepped closer before I could think twice. "You don't have to explain," I said. She lifted her eyes to mine, a long, searching look. Then she reached out and placed her palm over my heart. A small gesture, but it felt like the first real confession between us. "I notice you," she whispered. A delicate admission. Dangerous. True. Our foreheads almost touched. Her breath brushed my cheek. One more inch and the space between us would disappear completely. But another knock shattered the moment. This one soft, polite, a different voice. Package delivery. Relief and disappointment collided in my chest. She stepped back, straightened the hem of her shirt, forced her breathing calm. I'll get it. Stay out of sight. I moved behind the wall separating the hall from the kitchen, listening as she cracked the door open and signed quickly. The courier thanked her and left. She locked the door immediately, double-checking it a habit, maybe. When she returned, I noticed something new in her hand, a small brass key attached to a plain black strap. This, she said, holding it out to me, is for the downstairs entrance, behind the laundry room. Why would I need that? Even though deep down I already knew. In case you want to come here, she said, voice low. When you're not supposed to. The key was cool against my palm, heavy with meaning. The symbol shifted, no longer something she hid from me, now something she gave. That's a big risk, I said quietly. So is this. She touched my face quick, soft, then pulled away before either of us could take it further. We both stood there, suspended between what almost happened and what might come next. She stepped to the curtains and pulled them just a little tighter closed. Tomorrow, she murmured. 9. Before the building wakes up. The light in the room dimmed another shade. The rule became the invitation. Before I left, she looked at me once more, the kind of look people give when they've decided to step over a line and just want someone to jump with them. Come quietly, she said, and don't be seen. She opened the door, peeked into the hallway. A whisper of danger still lingered, like the walls themselves were eavesdropping. I slipped out unnoticed, the key pressed into my fist like a promise. I didn't sleep that night, not because of excitement, but because of the key. It sat on my desk, plain and small, but too heavy in meaning to ignore. Every time I looked at it, my chest tightened. I kept checking the hallway, sure someone would be there, pointing, watching, waiting to ask why she gave it to me. Sunday morning, just before 9, I slipped it into my pocket and left through the back stairwell. Avoided the elevator. Didn't turn on my phone. Her building entrance was locked, but I didn't hesitate. The key fit cleanly. Door clicked open like it had done this before. Inside, her place was still. No sound. Curtains drawn. She appeared from the bedroom wearing a long cardigan over a t-shirt, barefoot again. You came quietly, she said, voice low like a secret greeting. I nodded. She gestured for me to follow. We ended up in her kitchen, not saying much. She made coffee like nothing had happened, like yesterday wasn't filled with threats and pounding fists. But her hand shook slightly when she passed me the cup. Did he come back? I asked. No, she said, then added, not yet. I sat at the table trying to act calm, though my body was buzzing. She finally leaned on the counter and stared out at the curtain, her fingers toying with her locket absently. When I left him, she said, he said no one would ever want to be in the same room as me again, that I make people uncomfortable, that I talk too quiet, think too much, that I'm forgettable. I opened my mouth, but she kept talking faster now, like she was afraid she'd stop if she heard herself. I got used to the quiet. I liked it even until you showed up with that dumb hoodie, always checking your phone like you were waiting for someone who never showed. I almost laughed. I was. She finally looked at me, and for once didn't look away. You made me feel seen again, and I hate how much I needed that. I set the coffee down, stood slowly, walked to her, close enough that I could hear the way her breath caught. You're not forgettable, I said. She smiled, not with her lips, but with her eyes, just barely. I reached up and touched the locket. She didn't stop me, I opened it. Empty. But somehow that felt fuller than anything else. A space waiting to be filled. She placed her hand on mine and whispered, "Don't go quiet on me now." I leaned in, but just before our lips could meet. Knocking. Again. Not at the door. Louder. From the hallway window. She froze. I turned toward the sound, but she grabbed my wrist hard. She pulled me down, motioning toward the floor beside the counter. We crouched, barely breathing. A moment later, the sound of keys. Metal against metal. Someone trying to open her door. But it didn't work. She had changed the lock. "Damn it!" a man muttered from outside. Then came retreating steps. The elevator dinged. Silence. My heart thudded in my chest. We stayed low for another full minute. Then she stood, walked to the door, and locked both bolts again. She didn't say anything, just pressed her forehead against the door for a long breath. I stood behind her. "Why don't you tell someone?" I asked. "About him." Her voice cracked slightly. "Because if I tell anyone, he wins. He'll say I'm crazy, that I can't move on, that I'm dragging people into my mess." "You're not," I said, firmer than I expected. She turned to me, and in her eyes I saw more than fear. I saw shame, and I hated that it was even there. Then my phone buzzed in my pocket loud in the silence. She flinched. "Your mom again?" I pulled it out. 8 missed calls. 3 texts. 1 voicemail. From my mom, my friend Jake, even my boss. I had skipped a Sunday shift. No notice. First time in 2 years. She saw the screen and stepped back. "You should go." I stared at the phone and turned it off without replying. "I'm not going anywhere." She blinked, caught between disbelief and something like gratitude. I stepped forward and kissed her forehead. She reached for my hand, held it, and for a moment we didn't need to say anything. We sat back on the couch. The coffee had gone cold, but neither of us touched it. Instead, she talked about the years she spent alone, the night she moved in, the first time she noticed me in the hallway. About the time she almost knocked on my door but didn't. About how quiet can become addicting until it starts to sound like punishment. And I listened. But outside, the building wasn't quiet anymore. Footsteps came and went in the hallway. Voices murmured behind walls. Something had shifted. We both felt it. "People are noticing," she said, standing up. "You mean the guy earlier?" "No. Neighbors. Your mom. Everyone who's a little too curious." I nodded slowly. "So what now?" She walked to the window, peeked through the curtain, then turned to me. "Tomorrow, after dark, I'll leave the balcony unlocked." "You sure?" She nodded once. Her hand went to her locket, opened it again, then closed it softly. "If we're gonna burn, we might as well light the match ourselves." I didn't argue. The next night, the hallway was darker than usual. Lights dimmed. One of the bulbs above the stairwell had burned out. It felt intentional, like the building itself was trying to erase shadows. I didn't take the elevator, didn't use the front door. Instead, I slipped through the side entrance with the key she gave me, crossed the courtyard silently, and climbed the narrow metal stairs that led to her balcony. The sliding door was open an inch, curtains drawn, music low. She was already waiting, wearing that same cardigan from before, nothing underneath but a long black t-shirt, bare legs folded beneath her on the couch. The lamp beside her was switched off, just candlelight flickering from the kitchen table. Her locket glinted faintly in the warm dark. "You made it," she said softly. "I said I would." She rose, slow, walked toward me. Neither of us smiled. This wasn't playful. It wasn't curious. It was a decision finally made. I stepped inside. She slid the balcony door shut behind me, locked it, then pulled the heavy curtain closed with one swift motion. No one needs to see this, she whispered again. Not like before. Not as warning. As permission. Then she took my face in both hands and kissed me. It was quiet, but nothing about it was soft. It was weeks of restraint undone in a breath. Her fingers gripped the back of my neck. My arms wrapped around her waist, pulled her close. And we didn't stop this time. Not when footsteps echoed upstairs. Not when someone knocked on a door down the hall. Not when her phone buzzed for the fourth time that hour and she reached out blindly to shut it off without looking. The world outside blurred into silence. There was only the firelight, and her, and the feeling of everything else falling away. We stayed like that for a long time, curled up on the couch in the afterglow of something irreversible. I stared at the ceiling, still breathless. She lay beside me, her head on my chest, one arm draped over my ribs, fingers absently tracing my heartbeat. Neither of us spoke. There was no plan, no promise, just the weight of what we'd chosen. Finally, she lifted her head. Her eyes met mine in the dark. "If anyone asks," she said, "you never came in through the front." I nodded. "And if they see me leaving? Then next time," she whispered, "you just don't leave." 1 week later, Monday, 6:47 a.m. The sun hadn't risen fully, but the light was changing. Blue shadows stretched across the courtyard. The building was quiet, still dreaming, still unaware. I stood in the stairwell between our floors. No doorbell, no knocking. That wasn't the ritual anymore. I slipped the key into the basement entrance, walked up through the laundry room, and emerged into her apartment through the back hallway like I had done 3 times already this week. The curtain was already drawn when I entered. The coffee was already brewing. And she was sitting cross-legged on the couch in that same cardigan, the locket open on the table beside her. This time it wasn't empty. A small square photo now filled one half. Me, unsmiling, lit by hallway light, shot through her peephole weeks ago. "You kept this?" I asked. "I needed proof," she said, voice quiet, "that I wasn't imagining you." I walked over, sat beside her, took her hand. "I'm still here." We didn't talk about the neighbor upstairs, or her ex still calling, or the fact that my mom texted me 3 nights ago. "Why do I keep seeing you come out of her building?" We didn't talk about what came next. We just met in the middle like we always did. And when I reached to close the curtain tighter, she stopped me. "Leave it," she said. I paused, looked at her. She smiled. "Let them wonder." A small photo inside an open locket, gently closed by her fingers.